The snook had taken me around 2 different pilings, had me wrapped around a crab trap that was on the end of the dock. I took my backpack off, took my GoPro off, took my phone out of my pocket, my knife, my wallet, my dip, took my car keys, everything out. Gave it all to my buddies, and I said, I'll be back.
It's time to drop everything for a big snook story on episode 64, brought to you by reelsandtackle.com.
Welcome to the Telltale Fisherman Podcast, where avid anglers share the story of their best fishing day ever to inspire yours. Now it's time for another epic adventure. So here's your host, John Woodson.
All right, welcome to the show. Our guest today is Taylor Martin, who is coming to us from Jacksonville, Florida. Taylor, how are you?
Hey, sir, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very good, and people may be able to guess that you are in the service from the fact that you say sir. So,
yes, sir, I am.
Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, going back to the yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, that's how I was raised, and I thank my parents every day for, the way they raised me. Especially, when, like you said, being in the military, there's some people in the military that even though they're in the military, they still don't say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. And I'll call them every once in a while and say, hey, all the time. And I'll call them every once in a while and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I really appreciate, you guys, all the whoopings I got as a kid, all the spankings I got for, for really drilling in the yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. It really pays off. But yes, sir, I am. I'm in the Navy.
I can't say I've ever thanked my parents for spankings, but I probably should have.
When I was a kid, of course, nobody thanks them. And,
no.
My dad always used to say, this hurts me more than it hurts you, and I always used to say, yeah, okay.
That's not what my sore butt tells me.
I think he was getting that.
Oh man! So tell us a little. Well, first of all, thank you for your service in the Navy, and
my pleasure.
Yeah, and so maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do in the Navy and some of the places you've been and things you've done.
Yeah, so I'm a boatswain's mate in the Navy, and if you don't know what that is, basically anything that is done on the deck. So anything that's done topside is what we call it. So everything outside we have a hand in. I've been on 2 ships and been on land once. My first ship, my first duty station was in Hawaii. So I mean, it's kind of funny, as you can imagine, growing up in Florida and fishing all the time and everything. And then I went through boot camp in Great Lakes, and then I got my orders, and they were like, "Hey, you're going to Hawaii." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And they said, "Well, you're not really that excited." I said, "Well, I've been around palm trees my whole life and around blue water my whole life." And I said, and now I'm going back to it, but I'm not going back home. I'm going about 6,000 miles away.
Yeah.
But Hawaii was very nice. I always told people, though, it's a great place to visit. I don't know if you'd want to live there. Very expensive. But I fished a lot while I was there. I caught some bonefish. The biggest bonefish in the world actually live in Hawaii.
Wow, yeah.
Caught a lot of bonefish. And then I was in Hawaii for about 2.5 years. And then I went to Texas after that. I was stationed in San Antonio and at Fort Sam Houston. Mm-hmm. And I spent about a year in Fort Sam. It's actually where I met my wife while I was in Texas, and we have a beautiful little 4-month-old baby girl together, which is great.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I wanted a boy, but I'll take a girl.
Well, there's still time.
She's wrapped. Yep, she fishes with me all the time. She is wrapped around my finger.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, sir. And I fished a lot while I was in Texas. I learned how to catch, I think the biggest trout, the biggest seatrout in the world, I believe, live in Texas. And I've caught trout in Mosquito Lagoon. I've caught them in Indian River. I've caught them all over Florida. And I just think the biggest trout in the world come from Texas. Caught a lot of big trout, a lot of big reds while I was there. So, I've grown up fishing. And when I got my last orders to come to Florida, and they told me, hey, you're going back to Florida, you're going to be in Jacksonville. And the first thing I thought of was, okay, well, when I get to Jacksonville, I got to figure out where I can fish.
Right.
But yeah, as far as, you mentioned places I've been, I have been to let's see, I was in Rome for a while on a deployment. I went to Rome, saw the Colosseum. I've been to all over Italy. I've been to Spain. I have been to let's see, I went to the Ukraine. That was pretty interesting. I spent about a week and a half in Ukraine. I've been to Paris. I've been a little bit everywhere.
Yeah.
all over Europe.
Wow. You get around when you're in the Navy, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You do. The old slogan, join the Navy, see the world. It's still true to its name, even in 2018.
Well, that's really cool. I know you've gotten a lot of great experiences being able to go and travel and see all those places like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle back on two things you mentioned. First of all, the episode we have up right at the moment while we're recording this is with our first guest from Hawaii. So I was just talking with him about catching bonefish out there. I had no idea they had them. So I'd like to just ask you a little bit about how you were stationed on Oahu, I guess.
Yes, sir. I was in Pearl Harbor.
Okay. Yeah. He was telling us that there's some flats and things out there where he said those are some of the better places if you want to kind of stalk them, sight fish for them.
Yep.
Is that what you did?
That's where we found them. Yeah, we used to go right behind Fort San, I'm sorry, in Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, and it's called Pearl Harbor Hickam. Pearl Harbor is the Navy side, and Hickam Air Force Base is the Hickam side.
Mm-hmm.
And the bonefish flats that gentleman was talking about. Not to give away any secret spots, any captains out there, but there's a pretty well known flat amongst guys that I guess really know how to fish and know what they're looking for, right behind the Hickam side. And we used to drive out there a lot. I actually drove out there with a buddy of mine, and we kind of just took his truck out on the beach. And at the time, I didn't have a rod. I didn't have anything. I had just got there, so I had nothing. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, I know there's got to be some bonefish here. Let's just walk around. And I mean, you want to talk about stalking bonefish? I mean, we got about 10 or 15 yards away from a bonefish with his tail, completely out of the water, tipping and tailing, and all they were doing was there were about 4 or 5 of them, and they were just moving from coral patch to coral patch to coral patch. And that's all I had to see, and I was like, okay, let's leave. I need to get around.
Yeah.
Next weekend.
Hurry.
Yeah. I talked to a couple of captains. One of the biggest ways I learned through years and years of just fishing all the time is for anybody that loves to fish and has the drive to get better at it, to be a sponge, to soak in really any kind of information you can from wherever you're at.
Right. And
all that took for me was just to get on the phone. And the great thing about technology now is all I had to do was just Google bone fishing in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And I had a list of 5 or 6 captains. And all these guys do is they guide bonefish trips.
Wow.
Most of them fly fish for bonefish on the flats there in Hawaii. And I called a guy, I think his name was Brandon Lee. Mm-hmm. I spoke with him, and he was like, yeah, man. He said, that flight you're talking about, and he said, there's some big bones out there. He said, and they haven't been fished a whole lot. He said, because it's a military base and not everybody can get on there, and not even get in the water around there to bring their skiff or their boat up and kayak or fish or whatever they were going to do. So that's all I had to hear. And I went over and, bought a little 2500 Strack and bought some Power Pro. And, the problem though with Hawaii is that it's a mostly pelagic species that everybody targets. So not a whole lot of calling for like a DOA shrimp or a lure I was used to throw into redfish or trout or snook.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to actually fly. We had to actually pay first-class shipping and fly in lures from the States back to Hawaii to be able to go out there and fish for those bonefish.
How about that? But I take it you eventually got the right tackle and figured them out and started catching some?
We did. It was a little bit easier said than done. I had fished for bonefish down in the Keys and down in Islamorada before, and it was a totally different style down there than it was in Hawaii, because in Hawaii, I mean, they would eat almost anything we threw at them. The problem was just keeping them on, because where we were, the little flat that we were on, we would go out there on a nice low outgoing tide as all the bait started to get flushed out. These bonefish would come from off the reef where the water was about 8 to 10 feet deep, and they would move up on the flats.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking just bare inches of water. And
Wow.
any time, I don't care how many times. I joke with my friends a lot here when we catch these big redfish that live in the marsh here in Jacksonville. It doesn't matter how many redfish I've caught over the years. Your heart still skips a couple beats when you got one waggling around, about 10 feet in front of you.
Yep.
And it was, I mean, if you can imagine, I only caught 2 or 3 bonefish in my life before I got to Hawaii, and now I've got 10 and 12-pound bonefish, just these massive bonefish just waggling around 20 feet in front of me.
Wow.
But it was great. I mean, eventually, once we got hooked up, you'd set the hook and they'd take off and strip off 100 yards of line, and now I'm running down a little flat that I've never ran down before. I have no idea what's out there. But it was a blast, and then to go back to the ship though and tell everybody, man, I just caught a huge bonefish, and people are like, well, congratulations, that's great, good for you. And I'm like, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation I'm getting at.
They're thinking it's a little pinfish or something like that.
Right? Yeah, they have no, people just had no idea. They'd never done it before, and
Yeah.
And at the time, I was kind of like, hey, what the heck, man? You got to see this. And I'd show them pictures, and they'd say, oh, that's cool. My dad catches tarpon. And I'm like, okay, well, I've caught tarpon too, but this isn't a tarpon. This is a bonefish.
Right.
But the more I got to talk to guys, the more I got to educate them, and I ended up taking 5 or 6 guys out, actually out there on the flats with me, and they were able to catch bonefish too. Some of them had their first fish ever.
Oh, wow.
And
that's a heck of a first fish.
That's pretty cool. Right.
Yeah.
That's why I thought that's pretty cool. I felt really good. I was able to put some people on fish that took me, 20, 24, 25 years to be able to catch a bonefish this big. And this is these guys' first time fishing, first time throwing any kind of lure, or first time holding the rod and reel. And within an hour, they've caught their biggest fish ever and most people's biggest bonefish ever.
Oh, yeah. No, I think you pretty well spoiled those guys from the get-go. They're going to think it's easy and that they should all be that way. Man.
They should all be that way. You're right. Most of them weren't. Most of them weren't at all. I'll guarantee you that.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so the second thing I wanted to circle back on was you were talking about those big trout there in Texas, and so we've interviewed a couple of folks that had their most epic day in the Laguna Madre area. Is that where you were talking about fishing?
Absolutely. Laguna Madre, Baffin Bay.
Mm-hmm.
The whole area down there in Corpus Christi. It's actually my wife and I's first date. It was actually down in Corpus Christi fishing for trout.
Oh, how about that?
Which was, it was pretty interesting. We got wet. I actually got hooked for the first time with somebody casting. I never had anybody cast and hook me before until I met my wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, we caught a ton of trout. I learned I'd never fished in Texas before, and I got there pretty quick, and I learned there's always a wind in Texas on the coast. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is in San Antonio or Austin or anywhere else. But when you get down there to the coast, it can be a gorgeous day, but the wind's always going to be howling.
Always wind on the water, huh?
Always. And I had to learn to adjust to the wind. And there's you may know him. There's a captain in Tampa Bay where I grew up. His name is C.A. Richardson. He has a show called Flats Class on TV.
Yep. Yeah.
And he told me a long time ago. He said, Taylor, man, just make sure let the wind be your friend. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, thanks, CA. I mean, I have no idea what you're saying, but then the older I got and the more I learned, the winds, especially in Texas, on an incoming tide, all the winds are blowing all that tide and that water to you faster, which is going to create a lot more bait to travel faster.
Mm-hmm.
All these fish had to do was just sit up in the lee of the current on the little shelves that are there on the flats where we were, the little deeper portions. And all they would do is just sit there, and we would watch these big trout. And I'm talking not 22, not 23s. I'm talking 26, 27, 28, and 30-inch trout.
Yeah.
And all they would do is just sit up in the lees of the current where the water was just a bit calmer, and the winds would pick up and the gusts would blow real hard, and they would run out and grab whatever was getting pushed in the wind and push towards them, and they'd go back in that eddy, and they could just sit there. They wouldn't expend any energy. They wouldn't get overly tired. They could sit there completely undetected until they wanted to eat. So, naturally, once I found that out, it was pretty easy to start picking them up.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that sounds exactly like a big trout. What they love to do, sit there camouflaged, waiting to just snatch something and then go right back and wait some more. So I think our prior guests, we've talked with 2 different folks so far who've fished there in Laguna Madre, and they were both telling redfish stories, which I understand the red fishing's pretty epic there too, but they were sandbagging me a little bit. They didn't tell me about those big trout, so now I really want to go there.
It's a blast. I caught a lot of big redfish too while I was there, but anybody who's grown up fishing with me, anybody who knows me well enough knows that my favorite fish to target is a big trout. Just because there's until I got to Texas, I mean, in Florida, there's huge trout here too, especially on the East Coast. But so many people target them, and sometimes it's really hard to find those big female trout that are over that 30-inch mark. And the big trout, the serious trout anglers, 30 inches is the number that you want to hit.
Yep.
And if you catch 130 or over, you're considered like an elite kind of trout guy. And so when I got to Texas, I caught a trout that was about 29 and a quarter, and I was happy. And some of the captains that were around the dock that I actually caught this trout under, I was skipping glow shrimp under a dock, and actually at the marina, the local marina that's there in Port Aransas. And I whacked this big trout, and I was happy, and I was all giddy, and my wife was taking pictures, and they were like, "Hey man, that's great, but how, what's he measure?" And I measured him, and I said 29 and a quarter, probably around 8 pounds. And they said, "That's great." They said, "Well, why don't you catch one that's 30 and then come and talk to us?" And they were showing me tons of pictures of these 32, 33s they were catching.
Oh man, they just had to rain on your parade, didn't they?
Of course they had to. I mean, but it's okay. It's what every good fisherman has to always join every good fisherman.
That's it. There's always a bigger fish.
always a bigger one.
Yeah, so I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I've fished in the Mesquite Lagoon and Indian River there for years, and my biggest ones were just shy of 30. I think I had one that was in the 28, 29 range, but they're hard to come by. And
they are.
And like you were saying, it's a totally different fish when you get a big one on than, when you catch a small one. Redfish, even the small ones fight pretty good, but small trout, they don't really fight so much. But when you hook into a big trout, it's like a whole different animal. At least that's been my experience.
Oh yes. Oh no, you're absolutely right. My biggest trout I've ever caught measured out at 31 and a half inches, and that was actually in Florida way before I even joined the military. And for the longest time, I thought it was a snook. Where just by where we were and the terrain we were fishing, skipping under mangroves, actually targeting snook. Yeah. And I got the big thump and set the hook, and it didn't come up shaking its head and flaring its yellow mouth like a lot of big trout do. It stayed deep, and it screamed along the mangrove line. And I told my buddy that I was with in the skiff, I said, "Hey, put the trolling motor on and back us out. I need to get out into the big snook." And I got our boat side, and she came up, and all of a sudden, your heart kind of skips a beat, and you're like, "Okay, it's not a snook, it's a big trout."
Yeah.
But she was huge, but she was skinny. She was real skinny. I think it was the summertime. I'm pretty sure she had probably just spawned.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And looking, I still have that picture. Every once in a while I'll look at it, and then I'll look at pictures of trout in Texas that are that big. And the trout in Texas are so much heftier. That trout, that 31 and a quarter inch, she was probably about 6.5, 7 pounds. A trout that big in Texas is usually pushing 8 to 9 to 10 pounds.
Wow. Yep, that sounds like definitely one of the places to go visit if you love the inshore redfish and trout, man.
Absolutely. Yep. I tell everybody, hey, if you think you've caught big trout or you think you've caught a lot of redfish, take a trip up to Texas. Louisiana is the best place, I believe, in the world to catch reds. But if you want to catch a lot of redfish and you want to catch big trout, the biggest trout of your life, book a trip to Texas. Go to Baffin Bay. Go to Port Aransas or Port Charlotte or Port O'Connor. Go around there, and you will catch some of the biggest trout you've ever seen.
Nice. Well, you're making me want to head out that way. One of the many other places that I need to go that I haven't yet, but hopefully we'll get to it someday. So, well, I just speaking, I'd mentioned some other guests that had been fishing there in Laguna Madre. You know, speaking of our prior guest, I understand you're friends with another guest we had on recently, Quinn Hollingsworth, and you guys got to do a little redfish in there in Georgia.
Yeah, we did. Like I said, I met Quinn through social media. Actually, I'm pretty active on Instagram and some of the other social media sites that are out there. And and all I love to do is just every fish I catch. And I'm actually bass fishing right now, believe it or not. And every fish I catch, you know, I always take, as long as it's a good sized fish, I always take pictures. I edit them up and I'll put them on there. And you know, I'm a part of a couple of forums, but I met Quinn. It's amazing, you know, the kind of relationships you can strike up through social media. And I met Quinn on Instagram, and I actually was looking through some of his pictures, and I said, okay, this guy's in the Army, he's a Ranger. Yes, that's really cool. And you know, this guy loves to fish like me. And then I looked through some more of his pictures, and I thought, okay, this guy's really good. And it's nice because, you know, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm really good, and it's nice to find somebody else that is also in the military that loves to fish.
Yeah.
And all it took was a simple message, and all I said was, "Hey, you want to fish?" ? And I sent it off to him. Had no idea where he was. No clue where he was. But I sent it to him, and within I think a day, maybe even less than maybe 12 hours, I had a message back saying, "Hey, man, absolutely. I'm in Georgia. I'm in Savannah." And I messaged him back and said, "Perfect." I said, I'm in Jacksonville. You're about 2.5 hours away."
Oh, yeah.
So we planned a trip for about a month and a half. And, you know, I had to go out to sea for a bit. He had to go away for a bit. But then finally there was a weekend, this past weekend, where everybody was home, and everybody got clearance from their wives to go. And, you know, that was more important to me than clearance from the Navy. You know, I had that clearance from my wife first that I could go.
Yes.
And, you know, all it took was baby duty when I got back. So I said, you know what, that's worth going to Georgia and catching some redfish.
There you go.
But I made the short drive up, and we actually went to a couple spots that Quinn loves to go to, and caught some nice redfish. And then it was funny though, because I hardly ever throw live bait. I'm pretty much strictly artificial. And we got there, and they were not chewing jigs at all. I mean, I threw. There's a couple of companies that I'm sponsored by that I'm on the pro staff for, and I have to use their stuff, which works great here in Jacksonville, and I'm sure it works great in Georgia. But for whatever reason, on that day, they were eating everything, but they would not chew a jig. So Quinn fishes that spot a lot, and it didn't take him long to say, "Hey, man, we need to make a move. We need to go get some mud minnows." And as soon as he said it, I was like, "Oh, I don't want to have to throw meat at him, you know." And he said, "Nope." He said, "This is what we got to do. I promise you, we do this. We'll catch some reds. This is all they're going to be chewing right now. They're so focused on eating all this bait that's in here. You know, they're going to see a jig, and it's just not going to be enticing for them." So about an hour later, we had 100 finger mullet and probably about 60 or 70 mud minnows, and went back to the exact same spot and just tore them up. I mean, it was night and day. As soon as it would hit the water, all it took was just that bait to be presented in the right direction, and we'd see some reds coming down the bank real slow, moving down the bank, blowing up on bait. And all it took was a little quick pitch to the right or pitch to the left, about 10 feet in front of them, lead them a little bit, let them kind of happen onto the bait, and it was game on. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of the same way, that I prefer to fish artificials, but, you know, there are just times like that when the fish are so keyed in on bait that, you know, they just won't do anything else. But, you know, if you take a live bait and you free line it on a light leader and all, and you're sight casting the fish, you know, that's pretty fun too. I really enjoy doing that.
It is.
I've found.
It is. There's I actually told Quinn, I'll tell you, I grew up watching The Spanish Fly with Jose Wajebe, you know, God rest his soul, on TV.
Right.
And he always used to say, you know what, a bent rod is a good thing.
Right.
And I told Quinn that we were there. He said, "Hey, yeah," he said, "You having fun?" I said, "You know what, Quinn?" I said, as Jose Wajebe used to say, I said, a bent rod is a good thing. And I said, you don't always have to have, you know, an 8-inch jig on and see a redfish tail to make that perfect cast to him and catch up, you know, load up on the fish and stalk him and sight cast him. That's great when you can do it, but one of the things that I guess I'm still learning is that, or that I've learned over the years, is that it's not always like that. You can't always have that perfect scenario where that happens. When it does happen, it's great.
Yep.
But that's what's so special about it. And then, like I said, it was like, you know what? I just drove 2.5 hours to get here. I'm gonna catch a dang redfish.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I was like, yeah, man. I said, yeah, man. Let's give me a mud minnow. And all it took was a 2-ounce owner circle hook and some 25-pound CR fluorocarbon leader and 10-pound Power Pro. A little 2,500 size Stratic. And
perfect. Yeah.
like I said, they ate it up. It was perfect.
Yep. So I just have to ask. So we've got Navy and Army fishing together. Is there any kind of inter service rivalry there? I mean, it's
inter rivalry.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had another guy with us. His name's OG. He's a big fishing guy on Instagram. Him and Quinn know each other real well, and he's a Marine.
Oh boy, you really had the inter service rivalry going.
Yeah. So we had a big time little chit chat rivalry going on. A couple of things I probably couldn't say on the air, but plenty of trash talking to go around. It never gets old. Whenever you get military guys together, it doesn't matter what service we're in. If a fight breaks out in the bar, we're always going to have each other's back. If something else happens, we're always going to cover each other's six. But when you get us together and it's just a nice, cool, easy setting, problems happen quick, and it's because of trash talking.
I bet. So I was wondering if the loser had to do 50 push-ups in the mud or something like that. Caught the police fish.
We actually kept it. We actually kept it just for fun. I know we had talked about when I left, and I'm going to go back in about a couple more weeks, and we're going to go back up and do it again. But I told Quinn, I said, hey, man, let's just fish for fun. I've never really done this here before. Just show me everything this place has to offer. And we did it, but then we got done, and I said, hey, next time, let's do a little tournament action. And he said, really? He said, what's the wager? And I was like, well, we can do beers or we can do push-ups. And he said, how about both? Said,
I knew it. I knew it.
You know what? You read my mind. That's a good idea. Let's do both.
Put her push-ups and beer, right?
Absolutely. Finish 50, 60, or 100 push-ups and drink a couple beers. It's always a good day.
All right, man. Okay, well, with that, we're going to take a quick break here, and then when we get back, Taylor is going to tell us an epic snook fishing story that I can't wait to hear. So hang tight, and we will be right back. If I could use only one bait for inshore saltwater fishing, it would have to be the flats jig. It is extremely versatile, and different weights of jig heads can be used to fish from depths of just a few inches all the way down to several feet, and it catches all the target species. Just attach a swim bait, get that tail thumping, and the fish are sure to follow. Go to tell.fish/gear to check out the flats jigs that we like the best. Okay. We are back with Taylor Martin and just talking about some of the spectacular places he's gotten to travel to and more importantly to fish at. And we are now, I think, going to transition to another fish we haven't really talked about yet, and that is the snook, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So this is an epic snook trip you had. So just tell us, where you were fishing and what you were doing that night.
Okay. So there's a place in Madeira Beach, Florida, which is where I grew up in Florida. I grew up in a place called Reddington Beach, which is in the St. Petersburg area, but on the beach side. Okay. And Madeira Beach, Florida, there's a place called John's Pass there, and for many years, people have been going to John's Pass to catch snook. I caught my very first snook there at 10 years old with my dad, and ever since then, I've been going back and catching more snook and more snook and more snook and bigger snook as I got older. Mm-hmm. Now, in John's Pass, it's a big beachy town, and there's a big channel on one side, and there's a bridge. And if you go over the bridge on the other side, you're into another beach, which is Treasure Island. Okay. On the Madeira Beach side, before you go over to the bridge, there is a whole bunch of waterfront docks and there's a big boardwalk, but all these docks that jet out from the bank, they're all run by, the businesses like the jet ski businesses and the boat rental businesses. And there's probably 70 or 80 docks, and they're all about 20 feet apart from each other. Okay. Some have lights, some don't. And I had the great idea one day of just going over there and, just didn't even take a rod. I just walked over there one night after all the stores closed about 9. I wanted to go when no one was there because if there were, big snook like I thought they were going to be there, I didn't obviously want to come back and catch some and see, a lot of people there watching me catch them. I'd go back and I wouldn't be able to fish. There'd be too many people there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I went out and was looking in the water, and all I saw were snook, and they were just stacked up under these docks. And so I called two loyal fishing buddies of mine, and I'm sure everybody has those guys that it doesn't matter if it's rain or shine. If you have work in 5 hours and you want to fish for 4 hours, you can call these guys up and go, hey, you want to go fish? And they'll say, I'll be right there. And for me, those two buddies were a buddy, my friend named Evan Hildreth and my buddy Daryl Weber. Mm-hmm. And guys that I fished with and played baseball against for years and years growing up. And I called them and I said, hey, I found something over here that I don't think anybody really knows about. Let's go hit it. And they were like, okay, let's go. So we looked at the tide the next day. I wanted to do it. This is winter time. I wanted to do it on a nice medium high outgoing tide. Okay. And we got there, got set up, and the plan was we were going to start at the very north end of the dock, or of all the docks, get in the water, and we were going to wade under every one of these docks until we got to the end, and then we were going to fish our way back and leave. Mm-hmm. So we got to the very first dock, and I mean, all we were throwing, my simple rig that I like to throw for snook. I use a 2500 or a 3000 size Shimano Stratic, about 10-pound Power Pro on it. Fishing around heavy cover, so you can use 25. I like to use 30 or 40-pound leader. Yeah. Cigar fluorocarbon leader, and usually I would throw a DOA glow shrimp rigged on a little 2-aught circle hook. They come with the normal, mustad hook on them, already pre-rigged. I like to take that out and put a circle hook on them. Okay. Especially when I'm throwing around the pilings and skipping under docks. With the circle hook, if you get hung around a piling or if your bait drifts into a piling, there's no way you can really hook up on a piling and get snagged because of the way the circle hook is bent, the way they're shaped. Okay. That piling would actually have to be like a fish and turn around and go the other way for the hook to actually bury into the wood. Yeah. So knowing that, I was able just to walk from dock to dock to dock, and we'd stand about 10 feet away from the dock and just sidearm skip our shrimp along the surface. And once those snook would hear that and we'd let that bait fall and start to kind of drift out with the tide, give it a couple twitches every once in a while. But at the first dock, we caught our first snook. And it was, I caught the first one. She was about 26, 27 inches. So nice, respectable. Nice, yeah. And off the first dock, we only caught that one fish. The second dock, we caught 2. The third dock, we caught more. I think we caught 4 or 5 at the third dock. And all of these fish, keep in mind, all these fish aren't small. These fish are anywhere from, 26, 27 to about 30 inches. Nice, good, respectable fish. Oh, very nice, yeah. And of course, we're in close quarters, so I mean, you set the hook on a fish and they scream off from the dock. Sometimes you have to walk in the dock and go get them if you don't want to break them off. Right. But we would just jump from dock to dock to dock, and some of the docks we'd look at and there'd be lights and we'd see the snook come up and sucking bait down off the surface and feeding. Some of them there'd be no light, and just for me, a preference, I like fishing the docks that have no lights on them. And the reason why for me is because, for me, I love fishing docks that are blacked out. And the reason why, I believe, is because I think the snook is the smartest saltwater fish that swims. And the reason why I will say that is because actually on that very same night, the way we were walking, the tide was moving out. So we were working against the current when we were working our jigs. Mm-hmm. We were catching a couple of fish here and there. We weren't getting very many bites though. We'd get a couple snook on a dock, get a couple snook on the next dock, but for all the fish that we were seeing, I knew something wasn't right. We should be catching more. Mm-hmm. All it took was for us to turn around and walk through the dock instead of casting under it, walk through it and turn around and cast back the way we came and work our jig out with the current like a natural moving shrimp or bait fish getting blown out with the tide. Right. And we caught snook after snook after snook, and all it took was the fact those snooks saw that bait moving against the current, and they thought, that's not the way that bait's supposed to move. Mm-hmm. He should be getting flushed out away from me. Why is he coming to me? something's not right there. I'm not going to eat that.
Yep.
But as soon as we moved and changed position and repositioned ourselves, it was like night and day, man. And we caught snook after snook after snook, and there's probably about 60 docks. We caught about a fish or two on almost every other dock. But the kind of climax building up to it, we got to the dock there was about, I'd say 3 more docks left. We got to this dock, we walked through it, and I casted a glow shrimp through the other side of the dock, let it hit the bottom, gave it one twitch, got a thump, set the hook, and I mean, all of a sudden, anybody who's ever caught a big snook or hooked a big snook, you know it's a big snook because they'll put the hook and there'll be a pause for a second, and then the snook will take off.
Yeah.
You'll feel them jerk their head back down. Just like you jerk them when you set the hook, you'll feel them jerk back.
Yep.
And this snook jerked back and took off probably about 60 yards of line in just a couple seconds. And keep in mind, this is all happening about 15 feet away. So I knew I had a big snook. I had a backpack, took my backpack off, took my GoPro off, took my phone out of my pocket, my knife, my wallet, my dipstick, my car keys, everything out, and gave it all to my buddies. And I said, I'll be back. I'll be right back. And through all the twists and turns and pilings of the dock, the snook had taken me around 2 different pilings, had me wrapped around a crab trap that was on the end of the dock, and he was kind of floundering up at the surface because he had basically just run out of line to pull. So he was kind of flapping around the surface. I couldn't really tell how big she was. I just knew that she was over 35. And so as I'm getting out farther under the dock, I'm getting closer and closer to the end of the dock, and the water's getting deeper, and it's getting deeper. And, you know, first it's at my knees, and then it's at my waistline, then it's at my chest. And now it's, you know, it's getting towards my neck. And keep in mind, John's Pass is known for huge bull sharks. Oh. And we catch a lot of big bull sharks in John's Pass.
Yeah.
Hammerheads as well in the summertime. They follow the tarpon in. So all that's in the back of my head. I'm getting closer, and then I feel the fish shake, and I can feel my leader just rubbing through all the piling.
Yep.
So all I did was just I put my reel in free spool, opened the bail, went slack on the fish. Took me about 5 or 10 minutes. And I got everything unwrapped, got to the dock, lipped the snook, like bass lipped him, and carefully kind of dragged her through all the pilings back into shore to my anxious buddies who are wondering where I went because it's pitch black and they can't see anything.
Oh, yeah.
They hear a bunch of thrashing. They hear me yelling and hollering, but they have no idea what's going on. And I came back and I emerged from the dock. We put her on the tape, and she was 43.5 inches long.
Whoa!
My biggest snook I've ever pulled out, biggest snook ever pulled out from under a dock. Favorite way to catch them.
With 10-pound Power Pro?
With 10-pound Power Pro.
Oh my goodness!
And people, not everybody believes the story, but I have a partial video of it that one of my buddy Evan was actually just happened to be recording on his phone, and I mean, you can't see much, but you can see what it is. And I always tell people, man, it doesn't matter. I've hooked 90-pound tarpon on 10-pound braid before, and the only reason they got off is because I got spooled. Yeah. And all it is just your drag. You have to know when to let the fish run, when to pull on them, how to play them, when to give them line and when not to. And you can catch these big fish on 10-pound Power Pro and 25 or 30-pound leader. It's very simple. You just have to know how to do it.
Well, yeah, but when you're around pilings, that kind of changes the game a little bit. Wrong rub.
And probably what saved me was I just had the quick thought just to open my bail.
Yeah. Yep.
I have no idea why I thought it. It was just, hey, open your bail. I opened, my body reacted just from muscle memory. I opened my bail, and that saved me because anytime that fish wanted to run or pull or tug, she had free rein to do that. There was nothing to hold her back.
Yeah.
Probably helped her relax a bit. She may have even thought she was free, but she was so tired from her fight, she was just laying on the surface, and all it took was for me to go over and just grab her.
Wow.
We did. We put her on the tape, 43 inches long. I didn't weigh her. I'm guessing close to 20 pounds. But we revived her and took some great pictures. Revived her, let her go. She swam off just fine. We continued our wade. I caught one more snook after that. Evan and Daryl each caught about 10 or 12 snook apiece. They had a great time. But was kind of like, okay, how do we top this? You know, I mean, we had a
Yeah,
great
for
day.
real.
It was a great night of fishing. You know, we started at about 9:30 at night, and it was probably about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and the tide was just about dead low, and it was flowing out when we started, and it's kind of like, how do you top this? And we kind of just sat there and smiled, and it was like, well, you know, we can always come back. You know, there's, like you said earlier in the interview, there's always a bigger fish. Yeah, there's always a bigger fish. I can't tell you how many times since then I went back and hooked snook I knew were bigger than that 43 and either got busted off or you know, got the hook spit or something.
Man.
But
that's why we keep trying.
It was the most. That's why we keep trying. It was the most epic snook day I've ever had. I've caught more in one day than 56, but not of that quality. Not of fish. We didn't. No fish was under 26 inches. Every fish was about at the 30. The average was about the 30 to 31, 32 inch mark.
Yeah, and probably not as many in that short a time as you were fishing, right? I mean, that was just a few hours.
It was we were out there about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Just and the reason why was, I mean, we would have kept fishing, but once in that spot, once the tide gets dead low and the water stops moving, it's like a light switch. I mean, the fish just stop feeding. There's no conveyor belt anymore of bait coming to them. And it was the winter time, and those fish get really, really, you know, sluggish in the winter time, and they're not going to move a whole lot for a bait.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, now if we just stayed longer and you know, let the tide start flowing back in, which I had actually done after that, and caught more snook, you know, we probably would have caught a lot more. But after all that, you know, like I said, I mean, I was pretty much done when I caught that 43. I was like, you know what, I'm done. You guys can fish. I'm gonna sit down. You know, I'm gonna sit down and you know, text my mom and dad, let them know what I caught. You know, start editing some pictures. I was pretty much happy with that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how could you not be?
Yeah. Oh no. After you catch a fish like that, you kind of just want to sit there and soak it in.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to take in the moment.
Oh man.
There's so few of them, and they're you know, people don't realize, I guess, sometimes how precious moments like that are until you do it. And if you don't sit there and take it in, pretty soon it's gone, and you'll never get it back. So I always, anytime I get a fish like that, I always try and just sit back and take some pictures and really just kind of take in what I just did.
Yep, absolutely. Well, so I'm getting ready for my midsummer snook trip. We go over to the Gulf Coast there, and I was getting pretty fired up before, but man, now after hearing your story, I want to go pack up today and head over there. Golly, what?
Absolutely. I know the feeling. Trust me, I know the feeling.
Wow. Well, that I can just I could sure picture that, and I love skipping under docks and catching bass, or you know, anything under docks. That hand-to-hand combat, you know, it's that close quarter combat is so fun. And then snook
that's the best part of it.
Oh yeah, and then snook is probably my favorite fish, you know, overall to catch, just because they have it all, you know, speed and power, and they jump.
Oh yeah.
That night.
Smartest fish that swims.
Yeah,
smartest fish that swims.
And they're smart, and then man, to get on them like that, man, that just was spectacular. What a great story. All right, well, Taylor, man, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that story with us, and I'm gonna be following you here on Instagram and look forward to seeing you top that 43-inch snook.
Yes, sir. Oh, trust me. I'll be trying. And like I said, it's summertime. I'm about to take a trip down south to see the folks anyway. So I'm sure while I'm down there, I can talk the wife into waiting around the dock. She's seen too many pictures and heard too many stories not to want to try it. So she's fired up about it as well.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll look forward to seeing that, and look forward to seeing more good things to come from you and Quinn and the guys, you know, hitting the redfish. That's good stuff.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Are you an avid angler with an epic fishing story to tell? Well, we want to hear it. Sign up to be a guest on the show at www.tell.fish/guest, or hit us up with a DM on Instagram at Telltale Fisherman. We can't wait to welcome you aboard.
This has been the Telltale Fisherman Podcast. Thanks for sharing another great tale with us. Be sure to check out the show notes page for more info on today's show and the gear we talked about. Keep those lines tight, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Telltale Fisherman Podcast.